You wake up every day at the same time, catch the same bus, sit at the same desk, do the same tasks, and get the same paycheck at the end of the month. You have that comforting feeling of stability, of knowing that on the 5th, the money will hit your account. You look around and see everyone else doing the same thing, following the same path, and that calms you. After all, if everyone's doing it, it must be right. But then you look at your bank account and realize that after paying the bills, there's almost nothing left. You've been working for 5, 10, 15 years, and you're still in the same place. Your parents worked their whole lives like this and retired with next to nothing. And deep down, way down, you feel a tightness in your chest when you think you might be headed for the same fate. That little voice that whispers at night, what if I'm wasting my life? What if this security is just an illusion? I've spent decades watching this pattern repeat in millions of lives, and today I need to tell you a truth nobody wants to hear. I'm not going to tell you how to make more money. I'm going to tell you how you're being tricked by the biggest economic lie of the last 100 years. The illusion of the secure job. Most people believe that having a steady job is synonymous with financial security. They are completely wrong. Security doesn't come from having a job. Security comes from having value. And here's the first brutal truth I learned over 70 years of observing human behavior and economic cycles. The job was the biggest psychological trap ever created by the capitalist system. Not because jobs are bad, but because the idea that a job gives you security is one of the biggest delusions ever sold to the masses. Let me explain what I mean using something I call the paradox of apparent security. When you look at a job, you see predictability. You know how much you'll earn next month. You know your hours. You know your tasks. This predictability creates a powerful sense of control. But here's what your eyes can't see. While you're comfortable in this predictability, you're becoming increasingly vulnerable. It's like a frog in a pot of slowly heating water. The temperature rises 1 degree at a time so slowly the frog doesn't even notice. It feels comfortable, relaxed, until suddenly the water is boiling and it's too late to jump out. I've seen this happen to thousands of people, dedicated, competent employees who gave 20, 30 years of their lives to a company thinking they were building security. Until the day the company restructures, automates, or simply decides it can do more with less. And suddenly, all that security vanishes overnight. Not because the person did anything wrong, but because they confused temporary stability with real security. Now comes the part that will bother a lot of people. The true function of a traditional job in the modern economic system isn't to give you security. It's to give you just enough predictability so you become a reliable consumer. Think about it. When you have a steady paycheck, you can go into debt. You can get a 5-year loan for a car. You can sign up for that gym membership you use twice a month. You can put that new couch on a 12-month payment plan. The system doesn't want you to be free. The system wants you to be predictable. And the best way to make you predictable is to give you a steady salary that's just enough to pay your bills and keep you coming back month after month. It's what I call the stable income trap. You earn just enough not to quit, but not enough to escape. And here's a fact most people don't know. Behavioral economic studies show that people with fixed incomes tend to spend up to 23% more than people with variable incomes, even when the total annual income is the same. Why? Because the predictability of income creates the illusion that you can commit to future spending. You look at your pay stub and think, I can afford $500 a month for this payment. But you're not calculating the risks. You're not calculating inflation. You're not calculating the possibility of losing your job. You're calculating based on the illusion that the future will be the same as the present. But here comes the part that truly fascinates me when I study this phenomenon. A job not only creates financial dependence, it creates a much deeper psychological dependence. I call this the borrowed identity syndrome. When you work for a company for years, you start to derive your identity from that role. You're no longer just you. You're the manager at Company X. You're the analyst at Company Y. You're the coordinator at Company Z. Your ID badge becomes part of who you are. And this creates a paralyzing fear of losing that identity. I've seen brilliant people with incredible skills get stuck in mediocre jobs for decades simply because they can't imagine who they would be without that title, without that badge, without that routine. They've built their entire self-image on something that doesn't belong to them, on something that can be taken away from them with a 3-line email from HR. Now let me tell you something I've observed very clearly over the decades. There's a fundamental difference between two mindsets: the employee mindset and the value creator mindset. The person with an employee mindset asks, how much will I get paid per hour? Where do I need to be? What's my role? They are constantly trading time for money and waiting for someone to tell them what to do. The person with a value creator mindset asks, what problem can I solve? What value can I generate? How can I capture a portion of that value I create? Look, I'm not saying jobs are bad. I'm saying the dependence mindset that comes with jobs is what keeps people stuck. I know entrepreneurs who are more enslaved by their businesses than any employee. And I know employees who use their jobs strategically to build real wealth. The difference isn't in the form of work, it's in the mindset behind it. And here's where the illusion gets even more dangerous. People confuse having an income with having financial security. But real financial security doesn't come from your ability to earn money today. It comes from your ability to continue earning money tomorrow without relying on a single source that can disappear at any moment. It's what Charlie Munger always told me. Diversification isn't just for investments. It's for income streams too. But most people put 100% of their eggs in one basket called a job and still think they're being prudent. That's not prudence. That's collective delusion. When you depend 100% on a single source of income, you have no security. You have fragility disguised as stability. Any shock to that foundation and your whole castle crumbles. And shocks happen. They always happen. The company folds. The economy tanks. Your boss changes. Your job gets automated. You get sick. A million things can happen. And if your security depends on none of those things happening, you have no real security. Now comes the first loop of the trap. And this is where most people get stuck forever. I call it the time scarcity loop. Here's how it works. You take a job that pays your bills. That job consumes 8, 9, 10 hours of your day, plus commute time, plus the time it takes to mentally recover from work. By the end of the day, you're exhausted. You don't have the energy to learn something new. You don't have the energy to build something of your own. You don't have the energy to think strategically about your future. So what do? You watch TV, scroll through social media feeds, distract your mind to escape the fatigue. The next day, you wake up and do it all over again. And here's the cruel paradox. The more time you spend at your job, the less time you have to build alternatives to that job. The more you dedicate yourself to that income, the more dependent you become on it. And the more dependent you become, the harder it is to risk changing it. It's a downward spiral disguised as responsibility. The person thinks they're being responsible by giving 100% to their job. But in reality, they're digging their financial trap deeper every single day. And there's more. This loop creates something neuroscientists call the present bias. Your brain is so focused on surviving today, on paying this month's bills, on not losing your job this week, that it literally loses the capacity to plan for the long term. Sendil Mullainathan, a Harvard economist, has done fascinating studies on this. He found that when people live in chronic scarcity of time or money, they lose, on average, 13 IQ points. Not because they're less intelligent, but because all their cognitive power is being used to deal with immediate pressures. It's like trying to do complex calculations while someone is yelling in your ear. Technically, you have the capacity, but you can't access it because your attention is hijacked by urgency. And that's exactly what a traditional job does. It creates constant urgency, deadlines, meetings, demands from the boss, conflicts with colleagues, emails that need to be answered now. And in this state of perpetual urgency, you lose the ability to think strategically about how to escape that cycle. Let me give you a concrete example I've seen happen hundreds of times. Imagine an analyst making $5,000 a month. They work 200 hours a month, meaning they're selling their hour for $25. But here's what they don't realize. If they dedicated 10 hours a week, just 40 hours a month, to building a skill they could monetize independently, in 2 years, they would likely have an alternative income stream that could generate as much or more than their salary. But they don't do it. Why? Because after working 200 hours at their job, they don't have the mental energy to work an additional 40 hours on themselves. They're trapped in the time scarcity loop. And the longer they stay trapped, the more years go by, the older they get, the harder it becomes to change, and the more they convince themselves they have no alternative but to stay in the job until retirement. That's the trap. And most people only realize they're in it when it's already too late to escape easily. And here, I want to pause because I need to ask you something directly. Do you recognize yourself in this description? Do you feel like you're working hard but not getting anywhere? Do you feel stuck in a cycle where your job consumes all your energy and you have neither the time nor the inclination to build something different? If the answer is yes, I want you to do one thing right now. Write in the comments, "I'm stuck in this cycle." It's not just for you. It's because when you acknowledge it publicly, you take the first step out of denial. And other people reading the comments who feel alone in the same struggle will see they're not the only ones. This is the beginning of change, unashamedly recognizing where you are. So go ahead, comment now. I read them all, and you have no idea how much it can help someone who needs to hear they're not alone. Now, let's move on to the second loop of the trap. And this one is more subtle but equally devastating. I call it the imprisoning competence loop. Here's how it works. When you work at a job for years, you develop specific competencies for that role. You get good at it. Very good. And here's the paradox. The better you get, the more valuable you become to that company, and the less transferable your skills become to other opportunities. You become an expert in a system, in a software, in a process that only exists within that organization. I've seen this happen with brilliant managers who knew everything about operating within a large corporation, but had no clue how to sell, how to create a product, how to win a client from scratch. They had competence, but it was a competence that only had value within that specific context. Take them out of it, and they're lost. And here's the cruel part. The higher you climb the corporate ladder, the more trapped you become, because now you're earning well. You have an important title. You have status. You have benefits. You have that premium health plan. You have that company car. You have that office with a view. And now the cost of leaving has become sky high. It's not just the financial cost, it's the cost to your identity, your social status, how your friends and family see you. You've become the manager, the director, the executive. How are you going to explain to everyone that you're throwing it all away to start from scratch? The social pressure is immense, and the higher you climb, the more that pressure increases. I've seen directors earning $50,000 a month who were utterly miserable but didn't have the courage to leave because they couldn't imagine having a lower standard of living. They were trapped in a golden cage where the bars are made of benefits, status, and the fear of losing it all. But here's something very few people understand about true wealth. Wealth isn't how much you earn. Wealth is how long you can maintain your standard of living without working. If you earn $20,000 a month but spend $20,000, your wealth is zero. If you earn $5,000 but spend $2,000 and invest $3,000, you are building real wealth. I learned this very early in my life. It doesn't matter how much comes in. What matters is how much stays. And more importantly, what matters is how that money that stays works for you. But most people with jobs fall into another trap I call lifestyle inflation. Every time they earn more, they spend more. Got a raise, new car, got a promotion, bigger apartment, got a bonus, that dream vacation. And at the end of the month, it doesn't matter if they make $3,000 or $30,000. They're still breaking even. Still 100% reliant on the next paycheck to survive. Still no safety net. Still one unexpected expense away from bankruptcy. Now, for the third loop, and this one might be the most dangerous because it's completely invisible to those inside it. I call it the loop of selling your future freedom. Here's how it works. When you take a job, you're not just selling your present time, you're selling your future freedom, because that salary you get today will completely shape the kind of life you'll live tomorrow. If you make $5,000 a month, you'll rent a around $500 apartment. You'll buy a $30,000 car. You'll have a standard of living compatible with $5,000, and in 5 years, even if you want to change careers, even if you want to try something different, you can't, because you've built a life that requires $5,000 a month to function. You've become a prisoner of the lifestyle you built yourself. And here's what I've learned, observing hundreds of people who escape this trap versus the thousands who remain stuck forever. The difference isn't in how much money they earn. It's in how much money they don't spend. The people who escape are those who, even when earning well, live below their means, way below. They create a buffer, a space between what they earn and what they need to survive. And in that buffer lies freedom. In that buffer lies the ability to say no, the ability to choose, the ability to take risks. Without a buffer, you have no choice. You have to accept whatever is offered. You have to swallow whatever comes. You have to stay in a job even if it's destroying you mentally, because you can't afford to go a month without a paycheck. That's the real prison. It's not the prison of not having money, it's the prison of not having options. Now let me tell you something that might sound harsh, but it's a truth I've learned over decades studying financially successful people. Nobody got rich by being an employee, ever. In all of human history, fortunes have been built by those who owned assets, not by those who sold time. And here's why. When you sell your time, there's a natural ceiling to how much you can earn. You have 24 hours in a day. Even if you sell every hour for the highest possible price, there's still a physical limit. But when you own assets, when you own intellectual property, when you own businesses, when you own stock in value-creating companies, there's no ceiling. Value can grow exponentially without time limits. While you sleep, your assets are working. While you travel, your assets are generating returns. While you're sick, your assets continue to produce. That's the fundamental difference between selling time and owning value. And here's something that goes against everything you were taught in school. Traditional education was designed to create obedient employees, not wealth creators. Think about it. From childhood, you're taught to follow rules, to do as you're told, not to question authority, to deliver what's asked on time. You're trained to be a perfect employee, but no one teaches you to negotiate. No one teaches you to sell. No one teaches you to create something from scratch. No one teaches you to take calculated risks. No one teaches you how to handle rejection and failure. Why? Because the system wasn't designed to teach you to be free. It was designed to teach you to be useful to those who already own the means of production. This isn't a conspiracy, it's just history. The modern educational system was literally designed during the Industrial Revolution to produce factory workers. And even 200 years later, we're still using the same model. Is it a coincidence that this model produces exactly what it always has? People who know how to follow orders but don't know how to create independent value. But here's the good news. You don't have to accept this. You don't have to follow the script that was written for you. You can rewrite your story at any time. But to do that, you first need to understand the brutal math of financial freedom. And the math is simple. You need to create assets that generate enough passive income to cover your living expenses. When your asset income surpasses your expenses, you are free. Until then, you are dependent. It doesn't matter how much you make at your job. If you depend on that salary to survive, you are not free. You are in a sophisticated form of voluntary servitude. And the only way out is to start building assets. It could be investing in dividend-paying stocks. It could be creating a business that runs without your constant presence. It could be developing skills you can sell scalably. It could be buying real estate that generates rent. It could be creating digital content that generates recurring revenue. There are 1,000 ways, but they all have something in common. They require you to stop trading 100% of your time for money and start investing some of your time in building something that will generate money without you. And here's the practical solution for the first loop, the time scarcity loop. The solution isn't to work less. Most people can't just work less because they need the money. The solution is to work differently. You need to create protected time that is sacred and dedicated solely to building your future freedom. It could be 1 hour a day. It could be 5 hours a week. The number doesn't matter as much as consistency, but this hour cannot be negotiable. It can't be the hour left over after everything else. It has to be the first hour of the day, the hour when you still have mental energy, the hour when no one is bothering you. And in that hour, you're not working to earn money today. You're investing in earning freedom tomorrow. It could be learning a new skill. It could be building a side project. It could be creating content. It could be strategic networking. But it has to be something that compounds over time, something that in 2 years, 5 years, 10 years, will have created a real asset. Now for the solution to the second loop, the competency trap loop. The solution here is to build transferable and scalable competencies. Not competencies that only work within a specific company, but competencies that have value in the open market. And here are the most valuable skills I've identified over the decades: selling, writing, public speaking, coding, managing money, negotiating, building systems, understanding human psychology. These skills have value in any context. You can use them on the job or outside of it. You can use them to negotiate a better salary or to build your own business. They give you options, and options are what turns slavery into freedom. So while you're at your job, use it as a gym to develop these skills. Don't get stuck just doing what you're told. Look for opportunities to learn to sell, to learn to negotiate, to learn to lead, to learn to create processes. Use the time you're being paid for to develop skills that will set you free in the future. And for the third loop, the future freedom selling loop, the solution is brutally simple but difficult to execute. You need to live below your means, way below. And here's the magic number I recommend. Live on 50% of what you earn. If you make $60,000, live on $30,000. If you make $100,000, live on $50,000. Impossible? Most people think so. But here's the truth. You've lived on less than you earn today. When you were making half of what you make now, you survived. So you know it's possible. What changed wasn't your need. It was your lifestyle. And lifestyle is a choice you make every day. And every time you choose to spend more, you're choosing to have less future freedom. Every time you choose to spend less, you're buying your freedom back. That's the math. Simple, brutal, true. And here's what nobody tells you about this strategy. For the first few months, it's going to be tough. You'll feel like you're depriving yourself. You'll feel like you're missing out. You'll look at your colleagues who earn the same as you but are spending it all and feel envious. They have the new car. You have the used one. They go to the resort. You go to the simple beach. They buy designer clothes. You buy at the discount store. But here's what happens after 2, 3, 5 years. You wake up one day and realize you have $100, $1,000 invested, then $200, $1,000, then $500,000, and suddenly you look at the passive income these investments generate and realize it's starting to cover a significant portion of your expenses. And for the first time in your life, you get a taste of real freedom. You can say no to that abusive boss. You can take a 3-month sabbatical. You can take the risk of changing careers. You can choose to work on something that fulfills you, even if it pays less. Because you're no longer 100% dependent on your salary to survive. Meanwhile, your colleagues who spent everything are exactly where they were 5 years ago. Same dependence, same prison, same fear. They had 5 years of temporary pleasure. You built permanent freedom, which is worth more. Now, I want to talk about something very few people understand about the relationship between risk and security. Society teaches you that having a job is secure and entrepreneurship is risky. This is one of the biggest inversions of truth that exist. When you have a job, you're concentrating 100% of your risk in a single source of income. If that source fails, you go from 100 to 0 instantly. When you build multiple income streams, when you have diversified assets, when you develop transferable skills, you're distributing risk. If one source fails, you still have others. You might lose 20%, 30%, but you don't lose everything at once. So who is more secure? The person with a job and 0 assets, or the person with multiple income streams, even if each one individually is smaller? The answer is obvious when you look at it from this perspective, but society has completely inverted this logic. They've called security what is actually extreme fragility, and they've called risk what is actually smart diversification. And here's another counterintuitive truth I've learned. The time to start building your alternatives isn't when you lose your job. It's when you still have your job. Because that's when you have the safety net to experiment, to fail, to learn. Most people do the opposite. They get comfortable in their job, build nothing on the side, and only when they lose their job do they panic and try to create something in a hurry. But creating real value takes time. Building skills takes time. Developing relationships takes time. You can't do that under pressure, with bills piling up, with your family depending on you. That's why the time to act is now. While you still have a guaranteed income, while you still have the safety net. Use this time not to get more comfortable in your job, but to build the foundations of your independence. because the job will end. It always does. The only question is whether you'll be prepared when it happens. Let me give you a very concrete example of how this works in practice. Imagine two people working at the same company, earning the same salary of $8,000. Person A spends all $8,000, buys a financed car, lives in an expensive apartment, goes out every weekend, travels on vacation, has all the streaming subscriptions, eats out regularly. They live well, comfortably. But at the end of the month, zero is left. Person B lives in a simpler apartment, has a paid-off used car, cooks at home, travels cheaply, cut unnecessary subscriptions. They spend $4,000 a month. The other $4,000 they invest religiously. 50% in good company stocks, 50% in developing a skill they can monetize outside of their job. They spent 10 hours a week for the last 2 years learning graphic design. Now they can do weekend freelance gigs that bring in an extra $2,000 a month. Of that $2,000, they spend zero. They invest it all. Another 3 years pass. Person A is still earning $8,000, spending $8,000, has zero net worth. Person B now has $200, zero invested, generating $200 a month in passive income, plus the $2,000 from freelance work. Their total income has risen to $11,200, but they still only spend $4,000. They are now investing $7,200 a month, and here comes the magic. At this rate, in another 5 years, they will have enough net worth to generate $4,000 a month in passive income. At that point, they no longer need their job. They can leave, focus on freelance, expand to their own business, or simply choose to work on something they love, even if it pays less. They've bought their freedom. Person A, after 8 years, is still in the same place. Maybe they earn a little more, but they also spend a little more. The prison continues, and with each passing year, it becomes harder to escape, because now they have 8 years of bad habits, 8 years of dependence, 8 years of not developing alternative skills. Which of these two people are you? And now comes the part that truly separates those who build wealth from those who spend their lives complaining. It's what I call the long game mentality. Most people want immediate results. They want to make money today. They want pleasure now. They want instant gratification. But real wealth doesn't work like that. Wealth is the result of compounding over time. Small, correct decisions repeated thousands of times. It's not about making one brilliant move. It's about making the right move every single day for 10, 20, 30 years. And here's the amazing part. When you understand compounding, when you truly internalize how it works, you realize that the sooner you start, the more absurd the final outcome becomes. The difference between starting to invest at 25 versus 35 isn't 10 years, it's millions of dollars. Because those initial 10 years are the ones that compound the most. They're the ones with the most time to grow exponentially. So if you're reading this and you're 25, you have an advantage you'll never have again. If you're reading this at 35, you still have time. But every year you delay is a year you'll never get back. And if you're reading this at 45, 55, 65, it's not too late, but you'll have to be much more aggressive because you have less time to let compounding do its magic. Now, I want to recap the loops that keep you trapped so it's crystal clear where the trap is. First loop, time scarcity. Your job consumes so much of your energy that you don't have time to build alternatives, which makes you more dependent on the job, which continues to consume your time. Second loop, a trap of competence. You become good at things that only have value within that company, which ties you down even more because your skills aren't transferable. Third loop, selling your future freedom. You spend your entire paycheck creating a lifestyle that requires that paycheck to maintain, so you can't leave because you've built a life dependent on that income. These three loops work together to create a perfect prison. A prison where the bars are invisible because they're made of comfort, predictability, and fear of change. And the key to escape lies in breaking all three loops simultaneously, creating protected time to invest in yourself, developing transferable and scalable skills, living below your means to create margin and freedom. If this content is making sense to you so far, hit that like button on the video. It shows me that this kind of deep reflection resonates and motivates me to keep bringing you content that truly transforms, not just empty entertainment. And now comes the closing that I want you to engrave deep in your heart. You are not a victim of the system. You are playing a game, and every game has rules. Most people lose because they never stop to understand the rules. They think they're playing a game called trading time for money until retirement. But that's not the game. That's the game they taught you to play, so you keep losing. The real game is building assets that compound over time until you have freedom of choice. And here's the liberating part. You can start this game today, now. It doesn't matter your age, your background, how much you earn. The only thing that matters is that you understand the rules and start playing the right game. Will it be easy? No. Will it be fast? No. Will it require sacrifice? Yes. But you know what the alternative is? Spending the next 30 years dependent on a job, praying nothing goes wrong, hoping the company doesn't lay you off, living in constant fear of losing that single source of income. And in the end, retiring with almost nothing and realizing you sold your entire life for scraps. I've seen this happen to millions of people. Don't let it happen to you. You have a choice, and that choice repeats itself every single day. Every time you decide how to use your time, every time you decide how to spend your money, every time you choose between comfort today or freedom tomorrow. Your choices today are building your reality tomorrow. So choose wisely. Financial freedom isn't a destination, it's a path. And that path begins with a simple decision. Stop trading your life for an illusion of security. Start building real value that no one can take away from you. Develop skills that will serve you forever. Create assets that work while you sleep. And above all, live a life where you don't have to ask permission from anyone, where you wake up and choose what to do with your day based on what matters to you, not what your boss decided is a priority. This freedom exists. I've seen people achieve it. I've seen people leave mediocre jobs and build extraordinary lives, not because they were smarter, not because they got lucky, but because they understood the game and played it differently than the majority. And if they could do it, you can too. But you have to start, and you have to start now. Thanks for watching. If you made it this far, you're different. Most people give up in the first few minutes when the content starts to touch on the raw nerves. But you stayed. That tells me you're genuinely looking for real change, not just superficial motivation. And that's exactly what I deliver on this channel. Every week, I bring you deep dives into money, investing, mindset, and financial freedom that you won't find anywhere else. It's not about magic formulas or empty promises of getting rich quick. It's about understanding how money really works, how wealth is built, and how you can apply these principles to your life no matter where you're starting from. If this resonates with you, if you want to be part of a community of people who think differently about money, who are willing to make the hard choices today to have the life that most people will never have tomorrow, then subscribe to the channel and hit the notification bell. You won't regret it. Every week, you'll get a reminder that there is another way, that you don't have to accept financial mediocrity as your destiny. See you in the next video.